Hi, it's Rob. Welcome to the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. Now, one thing I find fascinating is how changes to how you say something or do something can make an extraordinary difference to your results. For some great insights and examples of what I mean, I was delighted to talk to a wise, hardworking fundraiser named Sarah Pryer. Sarah is Director of Fundraising and Marketing at Bristol and Weston Hospitals Charity. Enjoy.
And I could see as I was talking to this lady from the foundation that it was working. Like oh, I get it. I can see. Look at what we can do. Look what. And she said to me on the talk, what do you need? So I sort of talked through what we were looking for, what we wanted to do on the ward. And then we submitted an application and we referenced everything that we had talked about on the ward. And we were successful and we got a £25,000 donation. There was one young lady who was patient and she had benefited from some of the music therapy we had provided, and previously to having the head injury she'd experienced, she loved to sing, and she, after the head injury, hadn't been able to speak at all, and she listened to the music therapist and she spoke to her parents for the first time. We can make a profound difference to people's lives. So I think for us, we will always take that route and say, here's how it is now, here's how it could be better. It's really important to show the reality of that. I think that authenticity and that transparency with donors is at the heart of what we're trying to do here. There's no hiding from it. This is the reality we're working in. So, but what can we do? So that yes, it's like this, it could be like this. How do we get there?
Hi Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Rob, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I've wanted to chat for a while because I gather you've been doing some really interesting things recently. Before we get into that, let's help our listeners understand the context a little. What's the name of the charity you work for and what's your role?
So I work for Bristol and Weston Hospitals Charity and I'm the Director of Fundraising and Marketing.
Great. And many years ago, you came on one of our courses, our mastery program. But then about a year ago, my colleague Ben came and did a Bright Spot training session with your team. And I gather your team's been doing ever so well since, and various things have been working out. If you'd like to share one of the ideas or one of the things that you're really pleased about, that would be a great start.
Yeah, of course. So as you say, Ben joined us about 10 months ago, specifically to look at high value fundraising, although we did extend it to a couple of other members of the team, just to really think about, was there a new approach that we could try? As you know, we're in a really tough climate in the fundraising sector at the moment, and we were feeling that across the board, all the income streams, but we wanted to try something new in P&P, philanthropy and partnerships particularly. So we brought Ben in and we'd followed you guys for a long time. As you say, I'd worked with you many years ago. So we had a sense that this was the right direction for us and some of the things we wanted to try. And it's been phenomenal for us. It really has. It's shifted the way we work, the way we've done our business planning. And we've just had some really brilliant wins in that first sort of, less than a year now. So let me tell you about maybe the one that's certainly the highest value, which is the extension of an existing corporate partnership that we had, which was for 3 years. Value was really high, sort of 120,000 over those 3 years. And we known at the start that it would be a 3-year only. But it had gone so well, and it had gone well anyway, outside of the work that we'd done with you. But what we learned from the day with Ben was that there was more we could do to really think about, do we go for another 3 years? Do we ask the question and say, we've done such brilliant work, we've made such a difference to the children and young people in the children's hospital, that actually let's try this. So we were successful and we've got another 3 years, which is amazing. And the partnership that they have with us is, as I say, focusing on children and young people. And what we're so excited about now is that we're extending that support into our young people who've moved into the adult hospital, but they're still young, they're sort of 16, 17. So how do we make that experience better for them? And this corporate partner, so yes, obviously provides funding to provide activities that are extracurricular, to support the learning they have. The kids only get in the children's hospital an hour a day, which is really minimal, but also to think about how we might link in these brilliant colleagues from our corporate partner who have got really fantastic skills. How do we bring them together with the young people? So what could they learn that's useful for their future careers, or just as a really interesting life skill to have? And that volunteering partnership is, I think, really what's driven the success of this program. And it's creating those relationships and bonds, I think, with the children and the families. So we know the young people really love having the volunteers come in. They look forward to that day in the week when they come in. And that, outside of the income that it generates to do even more brilliant things, has been just a really special project to be involved in. And I don't think we would have gone for the additional 3 years and then secured it without that extra influence of Ben and some of the ideas that he brought to the table for us. So we're so inspired by what he shared with us.
Well, huge congratulations to your team for making that work. It's one thing to make the decision and set the intention to aim really high for what could be done, what is possible, and another thing to really follow through on that. If you were to unpick any of the things about how your team went about that conversation or set of conversations to help your corporate partner really buy into what more they could do, what would you share?
I mean, they were really bought in anyway, and they loved the project. I think what we were able to show them is it's about the people, isn't it? The impact that they're having directly. And then I think the future impact they could have on a wider group of people. So it was showing them that it wasn't just the income they could make to deliver great impact, but it was the difference they could make to individual lives as well. And I think that's what really resonated. So that's what we brought out in the videos we made for them when we repitched again, we made videos and we featured our young people. And it was that storytelling piece that I think was really helpful. We were in a really good place. So we had a really good basis to start from. So I think it was more bringing out the individual differences they could make, and it's those maybe we might call them wow moments. It's not quite as I would use it in other contexts, but I think it's that individual storytelling and that connection and the interpersonal relationships that we built on to show that this is much more profound than giving money. This is making a difference to people's lives, and we could show that really well through the stories we were able to tell.
There is an interesting idea here of great clarity about what problem it is that can be solved. And that is so interesting, isn't it? About, without going into too much detail, if you're a young patient in a hospital context, it's not just the illness, but the many impacts on your life of having a very long stay in hospital. And for instance, the impact that has on your education. And I sense that really tuning in, not could we have some money? Not could you extend the partnership? But this problem, I guess, for a 16 or a 17-year-old still in hospital for a long time, if they don't have excellent support to their education, the impact on their life long term is really tough. And I guess it's not about we're a charity, can we have money? It's here's a horrible problem. You've already experienced what that problem is for 14 or 15-year-olds. You can see that it's a problem for a 17-year-old as well when that young person moves into the other ward. And it seems that the more they tuned into that problem, the more, for their own reason, they couldn't help but want to see that as a thing to solve, so that any existing protocol or so-called rule that we only do charity of the years for 1 year or a maximum of 3 years, that fades away in the face of good people wanting to solve a problem they hate.
That's it. Oh my gosh, that's exactly the way to describe it. It's a real problem that we feel really invested in as a team. We really want to help tackle this. Our clinical colleagues are really invested in this as well. And then bringing in our colleagues from the corporate partner, they saw it for themselves. There were so many of them are volunteers now. They've done activities with us. So they see it firsthand. They can see what it is like for a young person to either with a chronic illness, which means they're in and out of hospital regularly, or it's an acute issue where it's really serious and they've been, potentially up to 18 months, 2 years in hospital. And what does that mean for their life, their education, their relationships with their family and beyond? And this is a way in which we can tackle that problem together. And there are amazing impacts that we've had. There was one young lady who was patient and she had benefited from some of the music therapy we had provided. And previously to having the head injury she'd experienced, she loved to sing, and she, after the head injury, hadn't been able to speak at all. And she listened to the music therapist and she spoke to her parents for the first time. And it's giving me goosebumps to think about it now. This is what it's about, Rob. It's significantly meaningful to everyone involved. It makes a real difference to lives. It really does.
Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. It does make such an extraordinary difference when you tune in to what these partnerships can achieve. That's an example of an existing partner being given the opportunity to keep going and do even more. I wonder if there are any examples of your approach to seeking out new partnerships.
Well, I think this is where the work with Ben has really come into its own. So the Dream 10 approach is really what we have absolutely embedded in the team now, and it is the basis of our business plans going forward for next year as well. But what we did immediately following the session with Ben was to come up with we're focusing on corporate first, our Dream 10 corporate partners, and top of that list was the airport in the area we live. So it is one of the top three that everyone wants. It's financially amazing. The visibility would be fantastic, and it's over a number of years as well, so multi-year partnership. And we have, as everyone does, always applied for it, never got anywhere, and we thought, okay, what can we do differently this time? We really want this one. It's at the top of the list, and we, in the coming weeks, we're having the launch of our brand new strategy. So we're having a big event at one of the hospitals. We were trying to invite people in, and we thought, okay, how do we do this differently? And this is all my team, so no credit for me on this one. They thought, well, why don't we invite them to the event, but let's design the invite as an airline ticket. So the destination was Future of Healthcare, which was the name of our event. And we didn't hear anything back from them, but we did it. We thought differently. We approached it in a different way. We brought some lightheartedness and some fun to the approach. And then when we found out a few months later, they didn't come to the event, but that was fine. We were able to kind of think, well, we'd done a really good job in inviting them. We're proud of what we'd achieved. And then the partnership opened, and we found out we'd been shortlisted, which had never happened before in certainly the 8 years that I've been at the charity, and before as well, I'm sure. And we thought, okay, how do we blitz this? What do we do? So we were reaching out to everyone we knew. We were targeting people. We were doing LinkedIn invites. We were selling the kind of connection between us and the airport and why it would be a great partnership. And we found out just after Christmas that we didn't win, but we came 4th out of 47, which for us was a massive achievement. And I think huge testament to the fact that the team had taken on board the advice and the approach that Ben had given us to be brave, to think differently, to not kind of follow the traditional methods of things we've always done. And I think that's a key part of what we've learned with Ben, is being brave enough to ditch what isn't working for you. So I think there's sort of two strands there. There was the kind of brilliant approaches and the great work that the team did in trying to win that partnership, but then also embedding more that culture of being braver and saying, do you know what, this hasn't worked for us in the past. Let's do something different. Let's try a new approach. So I think it's a really great example for us of how we put it into practice.
This is brilliant, Sarah. So broadly, what I'm hearing is both a willingness to do things differently and take some risks, informed by insight and caring about who it is that one would like a deeper relationship with. So we could call those wow tactics or wow moments, but then also just the courage and the persistence to do the work, to do whatever one can to reach out and deepen relationships in the second half of how they achieve this wonderful progress. I'm reflecting really is, even if one doesn't win a race in life, whatever kind of race our listener is needing to win, the act of making serious progress, to be in the running for the medals at all, absolutely feels like progress, and it has an effect on our confidence to keep plugging away.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly it. We aren't going to win everything. That's the reality in this game. Of course it is. So to see that huge change from nothing at all, no engagement, to 4th out of 47 across the area was such a boost to the team. And I think what it's given them is that, yes, that kind of proof of concept, this works. We can see that. There's tangible evidence. So how else can we do this? Who else can we approach? Who else is on our list? So we've got, in the last couple of weeks alone, another 2 prospects that we'd, again, not reached very far with before, who were now on the shortlist again. So we're using the tactics that we used with that previous sort of success to say, okay, what can we do differently this time? Who might we know? What's a good way into this? What's the story we could tell about what's the connection between us and that particular corporate? So we've got 2 at the moment that I don't think we would have treated in the same way as we approach that Charity of the Year partnership before the work with Ben, and then before the success with this recent one where we've come forth, because it's given, yes, proof of concept, but that confidence boost to the team to say, yes, this is the way we can do it, this works, and we're doing the right things, we're on the right track here. And I think it's that resilience that we aren't going to win everything, and that's fine. We're never going to win everything. So what can we learn from that?
If you need to grow high value fundraising income this year, our Major Gifts Mastery and Corporate Partnerships Mastery programs will help you do exactly that. To give you a sense of it, here's what Debbie Johnson, who is head of Major Gifts at the Wildlife Trust's charity, fed back about the difference that Major Gifts Mastery has made to her.
I have achieved my first 7-figure gift. The skills that you will learn and take away will change your whole outlook to fundraising, and that change of outlook will increase your income. Don't hesitate, you will not regret it.
All the info is on the training page at brightspotfundraising.co.uk. And if you've been listening in March 2026 and you've been thinking about applying this year, I'm excited to let you know that the first 12 people to register for either programme qualify for the bonus resources worth £266, including an exclusive success webinar with me and extra access to the Bright Spot membership. Right now there are a couple of these special places left for each programme, so if you're interested, do get in touch to qualify today. I couldn't agree more. Another tactic, I guess, that I really like, it's kind of obvious to many charities, but not to everybody, is the creating of an event, which in and of itself isn't about making money like a gala dinner or an auction, but is about inspiring people who could care about our cause, about what the challenges are for our community and actually what we could do to solve them. And listeners to this podcast know about how keen I am on finding those kinds of events that help you deepen those relationships. And it's one thing to do them. It's another to work really hard, to get people to actually show up, as exemplified by your example before with the airline ticket invitation. And then also to make the event itself as great as can be to inspire people and then cause them to be willing to want to go deeper and have further coffees or come on a visit or what have you. We work hard to get people there, then to do a great event, and then absolutely it's all about the next step and the next step of the deepening of the relationship. I don't know if you've got any examples of any other organisations that came to the event and this strategy worked out because it was the next step and the next step came to pass.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's a really good point though, Rob, that actually the event itself was designed with that in mind. It was presenting the problems. It wasn't saying this is our charity strategy for the next 5 years. It's here are the areas of challenge in our hospitals that we want to focus on for the next 5 years. So there are 4 very specific areas, programs of support, and we tailored the event around those 4 areas. We designed tours that matched them to really show off the kind of before and after, the impact that we could make, that the community could make, that our corporate partners could make. So it was all about presenting the problems and the potential for solutions that people could join us on the journey to achieve. So we had a wait list in the end for the event, which was fantastic. We had over 100 people join us. And one of the organisations that we targeted was a lapsed foundation that we had previously had a good amount of support from, hadn't connected with at all in the last 4 years. No matter what we had tried, there wasn't a response. And we had looked and understood that one of their priorities now was in the older care space. And one of our 4 programs is supporting older people in hospital and how do we make that experience better for them. So we invited them, basing the email invite around this is one of the challenges that we're trying to solve. So we're sort of drawing it in from the start. And we put them on the tour that really illustrated the change that we could make as a charity and with our community in the older care space. And we thought long and hard about what did the tour look like, because we knew we were going to show a before and an after ward. That was the premise of it. And in the after ward we had done some amazing improvements with our clinical colleagues to make the space dementia friendly. And in a sense they're quite simple. It's a lot around artwork, it's around colour coding, it's around points of interest, as well as we put in an activity coordinator in there. So there's activities for older people. So they go for tea parties, they watch films together, all of which are things that make this day better, but also shorten the recovery time. We know it improves anxiety. So there's real tangible benefits to doing all of this work. So we had the kind of after ward, which was beautiful. And we had the before ward, which was on our list of projects that we wanted to achieve. And we really thought about how do we show this off on the tour? And rather than doing before and after, we chose to do after. So we went there first and we said, this is what an older care ward can look like in hospital. We had staff talking about how fantastic it was. We had some of our patients were there enjoying a cup of tea and a biscuit before bed because it was in the evening. So they were there using the space. And it just didn't look like people imagine an older care ward in hospital to look like. And it really brought it to life. And then we walked to the before ward and it was a very different story. So there's, the care is exactly the same. The care is amazing, but the environment is not right. And we can do so much more. And I could see as I was talking to this this lady from the foundation that it was working. Like oh, I get it. I can see. Look at what we can do. Look at what. And she said to me on the talk, what do you need? So I sort of talked through what we were looking for, what we wanted to do on the ward. And I kind of, she left, and I felt, okay, we've made a connection here. We've told that story that we wanted to tell. And so, as you say, following up the next steps are so important. So we obviously followed up individually. We then were able to share a video of the event, which was great. And then we submitted an application, and we referenced everything that we had talked about on the ward. And we were successful, and we got a £25,000 donation. And it was all within sort of 6 weeks of this. So the speed of which we achieved it was, that in itself was a boost. But we put it to the test, and it worked, Rob. It was just a huge testament to what we've done, and a reinforcement of the approach that we were trying. And it was a brilliant result.
Really well done. And I can totally see how, if someone could see these two versions with or without the funding to improve that environment, why someone, if one had access to the funding, one would want to offer to help, which is, again, different from being asked for money, isn't it? I think one challenge for many charities here, understandably, is a caution about showing to the outside world, outside your charity, some things which are imperfect, that aren't as good as we feel they could be, like the difference between, for instance, an arts organisation wanting to market its best face so that people come and use it and value it, versus sort of, quote, admitting to the leaky roof. So I understand people's reticence in weighing up these choices. But for this kind of funder, I sense your feeling was, why wouldn't they need to see the problem they could solve?
Absolutely. And you're right, that is a brave move to show the downside, but that is the reality. That's the problem we're trying to solve. It's like with the children and young people in hospital. Here's the challenge. They get an hour of education every day. What can we do to fix that? And I think it's exactly the same with the kind of physical environment work that we do. You know, people are aware that hospitals are not always in the best state. And I think you're presenting that and saying, but we can do something. It's not that it's always got to be like that, right? But what can we do? And here, with relatively little money in the grand scheme of a hospital budget, we can make a profound difference to people's lives. So I think for us, we will always take that route and say, here's how it is now, here's how it could be better. It's really important to show the reality of that. I think that's that authenticity and that transparency with donors is at the heart of what we're trying to do here. There's no hiding from it. This is the reality we're working in. So, but what can we do? So that yes, it's like this, it could be like this. How do we get there?
Yeah. Part of it is being willing to show the potential supporter a world in which this funding never happens, so that they can say, no, but I want to make it happen. Just incidentally, I know that at this point, sometimes fundraisers say, that's fine, Rob, but we haven't got both wards yet. Both our wards are still in the before. What do I do then? And without going into lots of depth about it, one of my suggestions is to find another organisation, even a tiny bit like yours, that has already made such an improvement. If you want to improve your music school, there's another school in the country that has done it already. A hospital or museum with this kind of problem, some version of this progress has been made elsewhere or elsewhere in the world, and positioned the right way. Donors can understand you're not saying this is us, you're clear it's them, but you are nevertheless giving them a belief that this problem can be solved.
That's it. It's showing that vision, isn't it? And you're right. It almost doesn't matter, because hospitals, museums, you know, the principle is the same no matter where you are. So if someone has done it well, talk to them, ask them if they could share what that looks like. You know, how did they get there? What are the differences they're seeing? Paint that picture with your donors. It's still aspirational. I mean, we're very lucky that we did have the before and after. We don't for everything. So when we're doing a build, for example, we don't have it. So how do we share that vision with them? How do we bring that to life? And it could be very practical in terms of images that we've got from an architect, if it's a big build, or borrowing from someone else and saying, this is really good practice. We want to learn from this. We want to bring this here. How can we do that together?
One of the themes you mentioned earlier that your team have liked is this idea of creating a wow moment, because it creates this extra level of surprise or delight. And that very fact of it being a bit different and trying a bit harder makes actually quite a big difference. I wonder if you've got any examples that your team have done that you really like of that.
And wow moments is something we really do love, and we've embedded that quite a lot across the team in all sorts of different ways. Something slightly different, so not a supporter wow moment, but for our colleagues in the hospitals actually, that I'd love to share with you is our Trolley of Joy, which was the idea of one of my team. Just an amazing concept, very simple. It is literally a trolley, and then we stock it with goodies. And we have some brilliant community partners who donate cake for us, and then we've had a supporter see how effective it was, so he gave a £500 donation so we could stock it, and we take it into a ward where it's particularly challenging or they're having a bit of a tough time, and just it's super simple, but we just bring them those little moments of joy. And we had an example recently where one of the teams had reached out, so people might be aware that it's winter at the moment and that's a really tough time in the NHS, and this ward had a particularly challenging couple of weeks for all sorts of reasons, and they'd reached out to us and said, is there anything you can do? And it was a bit of a cry for help, and we thought, okay, this is something we can do. We can't solve everything else, but we can do this. So we stocked the trolley up, got it ready with some, as I say, some cake and some coffees and lanyards and pens, because nursing staff always love lanyards and pens. And then my colleague had the most wonderful idea of, we've got these postcards which are blank on one side and say thank you on the other side, and she said, why don't we pull off some quotes that we've had when people make donations about the brilliant care they've received in the hospitals, and just handwrite those. So they handwrote 44 for all the members of staff on that ward, and they delivered them with the trolley, and we've had the most wonderful feedback from nurses on the ward to the kind of leadership who've gone, oh my gosh, thank you, this has made such a difference, to a really grim moment. Actually, people are reading, and they're reading from patients who've been treated in the hospital and saying, actually, your care meant the world to me. You really looked after my dad, or you looked after my wife in the most wonderful way, and it made all the difference that you were there for her at that time. And to do that by hand as well, I was so inspired by my team that they had taken this to not just our supporters, they'd taken it to our colleagues as well, and gone, here's a moment that, we want to give you this moment of just joy and gratitude for everything you do for us. And I think that for me really sums up the whole approach and what we've learned from it.
So this is brilliant, Sarah. Simple in a way, but lots of simple things require effort to actually implement, don't they? But the idea behind it, not only sort of taking in not just a trolley with some refreshments, but a trolley of joy, and also going to the trouble of bringing to life for those very hardworking colleagues who sometimes might be run down, or might have just dealt with a patient who didn't appear to be especially grateful necessarily, to tune in to the vast majority of people who we look after are so grateful for all that you do, and helping us tune into that. It's obvious, but it makes such a difference when we receive that kind of personal touch, doesn't it?
Oh gosh, it does. It does. And what we wanted to do was not just provide a generic quote. We've got lots of those. We wanted to really tailor those to the specific hospital that my colleagues were working in. So we really thought carefully about which quotes did we choose, which ones were relevant, because you're right, most people are grateful, but I think that our nurses don't always hear that, and our doctors and our porters and our pharmacists and the amazing colleagues that we work with. So to be able to tailor that just for them was really an extra level of bringing that kind of gratitude and that moment of joy for them. It's really important that it's not generic, because that's not as genuine. We wanted it to be really meaningful, and it meant a lot to us to be able to do that, because they're our ambassadors as well. I think it's an extension of what we do with our donors. So the Trolley of Joy came after the session with Ben. So maybe that's the best legacy, the Trolley of Joy, right? Because the wow moment thing is really stuck with the team and the storytelling, but the Trolley of Joy is such a simple encapsulation of that. It's making interactions meaningful and tailored and bespoke, and that applies just as much to our clinical colleagues as to the donors and the supporters that we have. And I guess the way in which we've embedded the work and the approach from Ben into everything we do, because they're not fundraisers. I mean, they may be, but that's not why we're interacting with them. They may be, they're the best ambassadors we've got, but at the moment it's about bringing something meaningful to them outside of anything to do with fundraising or donating or anything to do with the financial work that we do.
Yeah. Hi, it's Rob. And just before we get to the last bit of the conversation, I wanted to ask, is there an area of fundraising that you need to improve this year? If there is, and if you find the bright spot ideas we share in this podcast helpful, please get in touch. Whether it's a bespoke training session for your team, or our Learning and Inspiration Club, the Bright Spot membership, or one of our 2 high-value mastery programs, we would love to help you smash your target this year. To find out more or request a chat, go to brightspotfundraising.co.uk. I guess one of my suggestions for our listeners is to consider how they might apply this going the extra mile approach, or you could call it creating a wow moment, to their colleagues, in addition to how hard they already work to connect with and delight supporters. Because sometimes we might think, well, should I have to? Or I've already done my best to build good relationships and it's not worked. But just to place that thought, to what extent could what Sarah's team have done just give you a nudge to go the extra mile somehow with an important relationship internally, and just what a difference that could make, A, for them anyway, your hardworking colleague, but also the bigger picture of helping fundraising overall and helping people tune in to how the whole organisation connects with, for instance, our supporters. And I guess the last thing I just wanted to raise is I've noticed that many of your stories, Sarah, to your credit, they weren't your ideas. I love how proud you are that many of them were ideas from your team. And I guess, you can listen to a podcast and get an idea, or you can do a team training day with Brightspot and get hopefully lots of ideas and extra mojo and so on. But really, success in fundraising isn't the one event, be it a team day or listening to a podcast. It's the extent to which we create a culture and habits whereby certain principles and ways of approaching our work recur and they become normal. Maybe there's nothing fancy, but I just wondered your point of view as a leader as to whether with a light touch or deliberate things in your system that you try to maximize the chances that these good things keep happening, whether you're there or not.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because it is a cultural shift for sure. And I think I'd probably say start with what feels achievable for you. So for us, what stood out immediately was those wow moments. So that really resonated. So we thought about what could we do immediately. So what we could do was the Trolley of Joy. What we could do was bring in little things like sending a pack of seeds to someone who's donated, who's lost a loved one, so they could plant those seeds. So there are little things that are easy to do. The storytelling really stood out for us. I've always been a huge advocate of telling people stories, because people give to people. We know that it's an awful cliche, but it's so true. So keep telling those stories. I will share stories, several times a week if they come to me from speaking to a colleague in the hospital, speaking to a donor, because that's what sticks.
So sorry, Sarah, you deliberately share those stories with your team?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. All the time. Yeah. If I hit anything, a little nugget from someone in the hospital that I'm speaking to, because I'm spending a lot of time with my clinical colleagues, I will bring that back and I'll share it immediately. And when I heard and I shared, and it's a lady who attends our dementia gardening project, which is a phenomenal project for our older patients. So we're very lucky to have a space inside one of the hospitals, which is an indoor garden, which open to the sky, but sheltered. And we, a few years ago, working in partnership with another charity, brought in gardening to the acute setting. And it was the first of its kind, because it's really challenging to do, but the effect and the impact is amazing. And we take our patients once a week down to the garden. They have a couple of hours. They do a little bit of gardening in a way that's kind of manageable for them. It might be still in their wheelchair, and that's fine. They may be up and about and doing a little bit. Then they have a cup of tea all together. And there was one lady, there's many stories about Dementia Garden I could share, but there's one lady that looked forward to it so much that she put on her best clothes and she put on her red lipstick, because this was a time out for her. And she went down looking her absolute best, because this was a real treat for her. And we shared that. And now we would talk about the lady with the lipstick. And that's one of our kind of touch points for Dementia Garden. And the other story, which nothing to do with the project, it was a supporter who'd been lucky enough to win our lottery. He won the top prize, and we always reach out. My colleague rings, she gets the story, and she asks if we can share it. So we've got a lovely record of those. And it was a gentleman, and he'd won the top prize, as I say. And one of the things he did with it was bought some budgies to keep him company. And he was so grateful to have won that money to be able, so he could do this and have this company, because he lived on his own. And he'd also shared lovely stories about how he'd used our bus, and his mum would have lovely care in the hospital. But it was the budgies that really stood out to us. It's those really personal moments. And now we would talk about the budgie story like we talk about the lipstick story. So keep telling those stories, because that's what this is about. So that is a real culture for us of storytelling in whatever way that works, whether whether it's on an email, whether it's in a team meeting, whether we share it on our intranet. And then they work their way into emails to supporters and interactions to supporters, and we put them on social, because that's what this is about. It's about telling the real difference that we are making to individuals in the hospital. It's not supporting the hospital, supporting people in the hospital, and what difference can we make for them.
I love these examples, Sarah. Thank you so much. I'd love to learn more and more, but time is against us, so I'd better finish. The main thing I'd like to say is congratulations to you and all your team who are working so hard, bringing these ideas to life in interesting, creative ways. Thank you so much for coming to share them, so that hopefully we can inspire more fundraisers out there to work more in these kinds of ways. And I look forward to catching up with you at another time very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. There you go. Thank you so much for listening and for supporting the Fundraising Bright Spots show. If you enjoyed it, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd take just a moment and share it on with your team or on LinkedIn, so that together we can help as many good causes as possible. Good luck with your fundraising or your leadership this week, and I look forward to sharing another Bright Spot story with you very soon.